Hello YouTube, Ace and Moogle here.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Alright, so today we've actually got a little bit of an interesting news update. So we've both been looking at Battlefield 1 and then we found out something rather interesting. So apparently, someone that actually had access to the closed alpha of the new Battlefield game decided to do some data mining. And they were able to find some of the weapons, some of the maps, and all that are going to be in-game.
Yep.
And I mean, there's quite a lengthy list of some of the weapons here. Now, I should mention though, from what I saw, it's not a complete list of what we know has been confirmed.
Yep.
The reason I say this is because some of the weapons have been shown in the trailers actually being used, such as the Lewis machine gun and the Bergman 15, I believe. The Bergman 15 machine gun have both been shown in the trailers, but they're not actually in these files, okay?
Alright.
And there's also a few other weapons that we should expect to see in the new Battlefield game that are also not in the game files as of yet.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, so what is your thoughts on this bit of news, Bogle?
Well, I mean, it's kind of interesting that someone's already been playing the alpha build, and that they actually got away with doing this. But, I mean, the fact they're showing off a little more of the weapons that are going to be in the game is really neat. You know, especially if it's ones that we know are historically accurate to what was out at the time, or what was even being planned at the time.
From what I've seen, okay, so some of the I should mention that we are going to list off the various weapons and how they worked or what they were for and all that. But as a general overview, we're only going to be listing off the oddities and specifically the stuff we have not actually covered yet. So, for example, the Mark III, the SMLE infield rifle, is of course in the game files, but to everyone that's actually a given. The same with the Springfield 03 or the Gewehr 98 or the Luger or the C96. All of these should be expected to be in the game. So we're not going to really cover those or other weapons that are like that. Anyways, so first of all, I think we should start with the. We'll go through this alphabetically. So I'm going to start here. The first weapon we'll mention is the Beretta M15 or Model 15. As it says on the tin, this was actually Beretta's first pistol design ever. It's like a lot of the Beretta designs. It is a semi-automatic weapon, and it does have the a 9mm magazine, I believe. But anyways, so it actually was made from 1915 to 1945. This pistol actually saw considerable use in both World Wars. So it is, okay, I guess it's something that you should kind of expect, but at the same time, most people aren't that familiar with Italian weaponry or Austro-Hungarian weaponry, which is, especially as far as pistols are concerned. So, which is why we're going to cover the pistols a lot more than the rifles. Yeah. So yeah, there's that. Moving on, Moogle, why don't you tell us about one?
Okay, well, there was the Bodeo, which was an Italian pistol. The unique thing is, for anybody that was enlisted, there was no trigger guard on this thing. And it was also unique because the trigger actually folded up and could then be, be used without possibly shooting somebody, while it was folded. So you didn't even need the trigger guard anymore for that. Okay. But it was also, very popular with the Italians or the Italian armies, and very reliable little pistol.
Yeah, I heard that some officers would even switch if they had a very crappy pistol. Like one of the more infamous examples in the Italians was the Glicente 1910, which, by the way, has not actually been confirmed in game. I just want to make that clear. But the Glicente 1910 was a terrible pistol, and a lot of the Italian officers that were issued that actually decided to pick up Bodeos instead and use those. Yeah. So, alright, so, is there another one you could tell us about?
Let's see, well, there's also the, Borchardt.
Huh.
I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that right.
I think, I think so.
But there were about 3,000 made, and it was the first successful semi-automatic pistol. Later on in its life, it was redesigned, or they looked at the design and decided to refine it a little bit, and actually made it into the Luger. And which is very neat. I mean, when you look at this thing, it does have that big back end, and then it has a little weird little like dial screw thing there at the top that you see on the more modern Lugers.
Mm-hmm.
But then the other neat thing was the ammo clips was later modified as well to be used in Mausers.
You mean the C96 broom handle, right?
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, the Han Solo gun.
Yep, exactly. So I mean that was a neat little gun there.
Yeah. That. Well, by the way, okay. Passing mention. Yeah, the C96 is in there. Wait, I'm pretty sure I already mentioned that. Okay.
Yep.
So let me try to see another one here. Okay. So we've got another weapon that was mentioned was the British Bulldog revolver. Now this is actually going to be a running theme, and bear with me, I'm not going to cover too much detail into a lot of these, because a lot of these guns are admittedly what were called pocket pistols. These, which were basically just small self-defense weapons.
Yep.
Now, the British Bulldog revolver is one of the older ones, and these were meant for civilian use mainly. The one major thing I can think of is that it was actually, I believe, the weapon used to assassinate U.S. President James Garfield. I think, yes, in the 1870s, I believe, or so.
I think somewhere around there, yeah.
Maybe 1880s. It was something around there.
I don't know. It's been a while since I've even looked that up. So.
Yeah. But yeah. So that you can now use a British, an older British revolver if you wanted to in Battlefield 1, apparently. Exactly. So another shot. Okay. So let's move on. Let's move on to one of the shotguns here. Specifically, the Browning Auto 5. Now, if you've ever played Battlefield 1918, you'll actually be familiar with this gun. It was I believe it was a 5-round semi-automatic shotgun that they did actually use in World War I.
Okay.
So semi-automatic shotguns are going to be confirmed, along with some of the more famous pump actions like the famous 1897 trench gun, of course.
Yep.
So another one. This actually is an extremely rare and prototype example here is the Cerejati. I think is how you pronounce it. This was actually an Italian select fire rifle, which means it could do both semi-automatic fire and fully automatic fire. It was an experimental piece that was made in the 1890s to 1900s. They only made a handful of these things. They tested a few countries tested them out. The Italian Army, the British Army tested them out. They had their issues, unfortunately, during testing, so they never really went that far. But it's interesting to see that these are actually going to be in the game. So another weapon we've got is the Colt Pocket Hammerless 1903, which shouldn't be confused with a similar gun which is going to be in the game, the FN model 1903. Both of these are, again, pocket pistols. Now, as a technicality, the only thing I can really mention is that the Colt Pocket Hammerless, I believe they made about 500,000 of these things, right?
I think so.
And they didn't actually have they did have a hammer, but it was actually hidden on the gun, so there's that. The FN model 1903 saw use, I believe, with the Russian Empire and the Austro-Hungarian, or not the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire, or the Turks, used it as well. And these were made in Belgium, until Belgium was, of course, mostly taken by Germany during World War I. So let's move on to another pistol. This one is actually a more common military issue, was the Frommerstab. This was actually made for the Hungarian portion of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. We've got one of the two. So we've got, apparently Austro-Hungary is going to get some various bits of equipment, depending on if you're talking about Austria or the Hungarian part of the military. That's interesting. Why don't you tell us about another one, Moogle?
Let's see. Well, we also had one that was called the Calibri, and it was actually one of the smallest center fire pistols ever made. or at least during that time anyway. And it had a 2.7 millimeter cartridge for single or semi-automatic firing. And this is once again marketed for self-defense.
What are you planning on defending yourself from on that?
I don't know. I might be able to take down a small grizzly. I think.
Grizzly?
I don't know. Maybe
that I would have trouble trusting that thing to take on gnats.
That's true. God. A very, very small grizzly.
Oh god.
I don't know.
So yeah, if you want to try attacking your enemies with a spoon or something that's lethal,
exactly.
yeah, you have the Calibri.
We might as well just call that a mosquito gun at that point.
Yeah, and it's actually named after the hummingbird, I believe.
Oh, the hummingbird. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that explains it.
Oh, okay.
So, anyways, so why don't you tell us about another one then?
Okay, well then, the another one that I found was the Lancaster, which was a modernized version of the Pepperbox pistol.
Okay.
And, it was kind of nice. It had a faster fire rate. It was more reliable than most other revolvers that were around at the time, and it was very popular for a lot of the British troops that were in the British occupied Africa and India.
Okay.
And it was a real nice revolver, and like I said, it was a pretty good one. Yeah, pretty much. I'd have to look for the picture again, but I'm pretty sure that was the one with. No, that wasn't the one.
The 4-barrel.
Yeah, I think that was the 4-barrel.
Yeah, the thing is, the pepper box was actually the best way to describe pepper boxes is basically it's one of those odd hybrids of these actually came out before true revolvers, but these were basically what you get if you decide to cross a Gatling gun with a revolver. So you have the multi-barrel system of a Gatling gun, but each barrel only holds one round, kind of like a revolver cylinder does.
Yep.
There's that.
And I think it did come in like either a 2 or a 4-barrel model.
Oh yeah, I think you're right about that.
Yeah. So just thinking of a double-barrel revolver or a quad-barrel revolver, that just sounds nasty enough.
All right, so let's have a look here. Another one. So let's go into rifles a little bit. Okay. The Luger Model 1906 specifically.
Boy.
Now this is another one of the more experimental oddities that we're going to be seeing in Battlefield 1. This was a semi-automatic revolver, or not? What am I?
I don't know.
What am I on? No. It was actually a semi-automatic rifle, and it was made by Luger. It was actually curiously enough, used the same action as the Luger pistol, basically, just on steroids. And if you actually look at the picture, it actually greatly resembles a Garand, I would say, wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so
I like it. Yeah.
Why don't you give us one more, huh?
Let's see. Well, I've also found in here they had the Mars automatic pistol, which surprisingly there were only 80 of these things made.
Okay.
Or at least around 80 of them. But it was one of the most powerful pistols introduced during this time. And the thing was that it was very unique because it actually had, like, you loaded the cartridges or loaded everything in the back of the pistol.
Right. I think what it was. Wait. What? I think what it was you loaded it in like a standard pistol.
Yeah,
but
that's right. You loaded it in like a standard pistol, but then when the ammo actually came out of the cartridge at the bottom, or the magazine at the bottom, or
the top,
where it was, it came out of the top. Then somehow did this weird mechanism to get up to the up to where the barrel was, but it would just like load up out of the back of the gun or something.
So
like
it would actually pull it out of the back of the magazine.
Pull it out of the back of the magazine and then load it into the barrel that way. And it was interesting because everyone that used this said that they found it they had very unpleasant times with it because it had a large amount of recoil. It was very loud, with all the mechanical pieces pulling that ammo out of the back of the magazine to put up on top, or put it in where it needed to be, and that and the fact that it always had one of the or a very bright flash,
muzzle flash,
or muzzle flash.
Okay.
When it fired, so it was a really unique idea, and did a lot of damage. But man, it just, for the amount of work that went into it, it probably wasn't the most efficient pistol in that.
What about how it ejected?
Oh well, yes, and then whenever they had to eject the casings actually came back out of the back of the pistol as well.
And imagine if you were behind that thing and tried.
You fire that thing and suddenly the darn casing shoots out the back at you. I think I'll just. I think at that point I'd do better with a bat or a baseball bat with a nail in it.
Well, which probably is going to be in game at some point.
Yeah, exactly.
I think. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on. Another weapon that they actually mentioned. Now this is another old weapon. Was the Martini Henry.
Okay.
Now this weapon is about as iconic as you can get to British colonialism in Africa and India. Because this was the weapon that was used during the Zulu War for a very famous example.
Yeah.
It was a single shot, originally at least, a black powder gun. So what was it doing in World War I, you ask? Well, apparently the Ottoman Empire decided to get a few of these, or at least get a few made from a third party. And I believe Romania also, to a much lesser extent, decided to get a few of these as well. So that's probably where we're going to see these as part of the Ottoman Empire's forces there.
Well, that'd be a very neat thing to see.
Yep. We also have got another pocket pistol. This time it's the Mauser Model 1914. There's not really much I can say to make this really that interesting, because we're going pocket pistol, pocket pistol, pocket.
I know. It's crazy. It's just...
Yeah. Well, okay. To be fair. To be fair, it makes a little bit of sense, because to an extent, the armies did, to limited extents, encourage soldiers to bring equipment from home.
Yeah.
For example, great example was when they had to deal with tanks or sniper shields or whatnot. The various armies actually encouraged men to bring elephant rifles to the Western Front to fight against this. Be able to punch through the sniper shields or to deal damage to the tanks. So yeah, there's that. Okay, so let's look at something else. Oh, here's one. Let's go for another semi-auto rifle, the Remington Model 8 specifically. Now this was, this they actually made quite a few of them, not only in the U.S., but they also made a few in Belgium as well. Its main claim to fame was that it was actually used for a bit of police work, I believe, maybe during the Prohibition era.
Oh yeah.
But basically, it's a 5 or 15 round. There was two magazine sizes, so you could have 5 or 15 round mags, and it was a semi-automatic rifle. So there you go. Moving on, we've got another shotgun, the Remington Model 10. Now, we already know about the 1897 trench gun.
Yeah.
Thing is, the trench gun is very, also, while it's a very famous gun, it also has that very distinct hammer at the back of it. The Model 10 is a hammerless one, which, not that much of a difference in gameplay as far as that's concerned, but it is at least, it is at least a different shotgun that they did use during the war.
Yeah.
So there is that. Moving on, let's look at another old gun, at least by World War I standards, the Smith & Wesson No. 3, which was used by both Russia and the Ottoman Empire yet again.
Oh.
This was actually a cowboy gun, basically. It's all used in the Old West. And what happened was the Russian military decided to buy a lot of their guns. Before they switched to the Nagant revolver, they got a lot of their guns from Smith & Wesson, and this is one of the guns that they would actually get. So there you go. So let's move on to another... Actually, let's move on to an extremely experimental design that even I didn't really know that much about before this data mining.
Wow, really?
Yes, really.
That's a rarity there.
Yeah, and this is the Standschutz Hellriegel. The Standschutz Hellriegel.
Oh, say that 3 times fast, jeez.
This was an Austro-Hungarian designed submachine gun, and it's actually one of the more curious. It's the sort of weapon that you can only expect to really see being made during World War One, because of just how odd it is. It is a submachine gun that is water cooled. You can actually distinctly see the water cooled jacket on the barrel. And while it did come in with a 20-round detachable box magazine, which is rather unusual, which is rather normal for today's standards, it also had this very, very bizarre drum that apparently didn't hold so much individual rounds as it held a belt. So you had a so you had a drum holding a belt which could hold up to 150 rounds as a second load. Basically a second way to hold your ammo in. So it was one of the more... There's very little known about it. All we know is that the pictures were taken from 1915, and that is basically about it. So, yeah, it's an extremely bizarre and extremely rare design. It's very interesting to see this is going to be made into Battlefield 1. Now, moving on to another Austro-Hungarian weapon. This one is actually an old hand that if you play Battlefield 1918, you'll actually be familiar with. This is the Steyr Model 1912. Now, Hungary had its semi-automatic pistol in the Frommerstab. The Austrian portion had theirs in the Steyr Model 1912. The thing is, even though it had a magazine in the handle like you would with your standard semi-automatics today, this magazine was not detachable, so you hilariously still had to use stripper clips to actually load the thing.
Oh God! Wow.
Yeah. So there's that. So let's move on to a British design. So this one is the Webley Frosbury. Now this is actually a unique thing in that it's an automatic revolver. It uses the recoil. It's recoil operated to make it an automatic revolver, so it automatically cycles through whenever you fire that way.
Okay.
So it's an oddball design, and it's actually very distinct with the grooves on the cylinder. I'm not sure about how popular it was. I mean, I think I've heard it called sometimes the ugly duckling of the Empire or something like that, but it did exist, and it was used in World War I, along with the Webley Mark IV, I believe. Now, sadly, no confirmation on the Webley Mark IV being in-game or not. It most likely will.
Yeah.
But along with some of the other weapons that I would expect to see, the files aren't quite in there yet.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the last of the weapons that we'll be covering here is the Winchester Model 1895. Okay. Now this was an American-built lever-action rifle, and it was actually used by the Russian Empire. Now the thing is, while the Russians did have a good bolt-action rifle than the Gantz, the problem was they never had enough of them during World War I. So they actually got the U.S. to make quite a few of these Winchester lever-action rifles. I believe they even were loaded via stripper clip even, so 5-round stripper clips. And these things were used alongside the Nagants.
Nice.
And so you have lever-action service rifles, which is rather interesting. So I think that covers the weapons, so let's move on to some of the maps. Well, some of the maps I've seen mentioned are actually rather interesting. If you play Battlefield 1918, yet again, there's going to be a few familiar names, like Amiens is going to be in there. Another one I distinctly recall is the Battle of the Suez Canal is actually going to be represented, which is
good.
Yeah, which was in 1915, the Ottoman Empire tried to cross the Suez Canal, and the British troops had to beat them back. So that's actually going to be one of the maps we're going to see. Another really interesting one is Fao Fortress. Now, if you've played Battlefield 19, or very specifically, if you've played the Price of a Mile campaign, which was campaign 2 of the Forgotten Honors 1918 campaigns, this was one of the ones that was actually in that. And the idea was the British actually did an amphibious invasion in 1914 into what is now Iraq, part of the Ottoman Empire.
Okay, yeah.
And they assaulted Fao Fortress. or did a siege of it, and it was ultimately successful. It was not like Gallipoli, which was a disaster. The capture of Feo Fortress was ultimately successful, and they managed to advance to places like Basra and all that immediately following it. So that's I think that's a good place to wrap it up, then.
I think so. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, a lot of interesting news, I would say,
Oh,
and boy, I'm interested in seeing what else comes out.
I know. I mean, I'm already making plans to get this game.
Yeah, I know. I've already got.
Just so I can see what I got.
I already got it pre-ordered. In fact, I even upgraded my computer.
Yeah.
Moogle can tell you about that.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at it right here. That's a monster of a computer already. And I've got some more RAM and a new CPU or new processor coming in to upgrade mine so I can run this thing. So
All right.
I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I think that about covers it. So
Yep.
Ace here,
And Moogle.
and we will see you guys again soon.
Yep. Later.